excitement with that, but there's also, Sarah, a little bit of danger with that. So now you've got two scenarios that we've set up here. We've got the momentum scenario and you've got the branding scenario. You've got the focus groups. You've got focus groups of swing state voters out there. Here's some of what they said about Kamala Harris. Let's take a listen.
It seems like the younger generation, they are more likely to vote for Harris over Biden. Like that's just the vibe that I get based on what's being posted online and based on what's being shared on social media.
I just feel like it'll be like a breath of fresh air. I feel like it'll be like a new beginning instead of feeling like you're watching a rerun because Trump has already been in office. You know what I'm saying? So we already know how that went. I feel like Harris would definitely bring a new kind of like dynamic to her ideas, you know, where she thinks the world is where she wants to take the world, you know, in the next 4 years.
She's quick-witted, she's funny, she has a personality. Obviously, being a female, there are people out there that don't want to vote for a female president. I think those same people are ones that would not vote for Biden either.
Sarah, how does the momentum and the branding influence these voters, and what are you hearing as a result of what Harris has done so far?
Well, look, the swing voters have been sort of the most depressed group as I've talked to them over the last year. There's a reason we started calling them the double haters, right? They did not like either of their choices. And so, like you heard in some of those clips, what we hear from a lot of these voters is just elation at the notion of having a new choice. And so for them, and look, what we're talking about people not knowing Kamala, that is really true. For a long time among swing voters, she's had sort of a negative impression. But the negative impression wasn't based on anything in particular other than people felt like they didn't see her, they didn't know her, they didn't know what she was about or what she did. And so people right now are saying, hey, let me hear your pitch. I want to know. I want to know what you're about. I want to know what you stand for. And so I think this is an opportunity to really reintroduce herself or almost introduce herself for the first time to some degree to these voters. And I think that the swing voters, who the double hater thing was always interesting to me because they really did hate Donald Trump, but they didn't hate Joe Biden so much as just think he was too old. Mm-hmm. And so now the question is will they look at Kamala Harris and say, I can get there on her, which is why the definition is so important, because if Trump is able to define her as a progressive San Francisco liberal, because the thing about these swing voters is they are often somewhat center right, and they're in sort of center right-ish states. And so that progressive San Francisco, that can be a killer. And so I think she's got to pivot away from that pretty quickly as she does this reintroduction, because she's got the enthusiasm from the base. She's only got 100 days. She's got to start figuring out how to win over swing voters. So
to that point, Tim, you've heard now how this narrative is evolving around branding and momentum and the definition. The Harris campaign is certainly positioning the vice president as a candidate of change, the change candidate. You hear it in the message when they say we are not going back. How big of a deal is that for the campaign to press that idea of change in the branding of this candidate, the definition of her going forward, and the momentum piece that they're trying to keep going on dollars, voter turnout, excitement, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it is important. I'm excited to be switching roles with Cornell. I felt like I was on here with him for a month where I was the Debbie Downer. Now I get to be on the other side of this. I think that she does have potential.
Look, I tell you, both have been killing me over the last month. So
I think she has potential for momentum. Look, we're a polarized country. It's not like we're going to wake up next week, she's up 55-45 or something. But I think there is the potential for increased momentum, both in the polls and in dollars. She has a vice presidential pick next week that's going to speak to this question of both momentum and brand. It will say something about her brand, who she chooses for the VP, and then she'll have a convention on the heels of that, with which she can further define her brand. So there's this long runway here where she's going to be center stage for a few weeks. And I think that as long as she continues to run the type of campaign we've seen for the first week, there's room to grow with the type of voter Sarah was talking about. And I think one of the big opportunities, speaking as a former Republican, that I see for her is all of this excitement we've been talking about with the base just gives her a little bit more room to wiggle. You know, she's not in a primary. She doesn't have to worry about winning over Bernie Sanders voters this time. The base is mostly with her. Much more so than Biden. If you look at all the data, you've got 80% of the Democrats now very excited about this campaign, which is a huge jump. And so hopefully, because she has that room to maneuver, we've already seen a little bit of this on some of these issues that center right voters, the swing voters, the types of people that maybe voted for Trump and then Biden, or in Georgia, for example, she's in Georgia tonight. I think about the Brian Kemp, Raphael Warnock voters. Those are the key swing voters. They both won on the same ticket, the Republican governor and Democratic senator. She can speak to them, by representing herself as a law and order, former prosecutor, tough on crime, not some scary liberal, somebody that you can trust. And I think that if she gets that piece down, the kind of future not past thing almost falls into place just by the pictures of them. Like the picture of Kamala Harris walking down those stairs and the little girls meeting her, looking up at her, versus old Donald Trump golfing on the golf cart. I mean, the future versus past thing, that just happens as long as you get the rest of it in place.
But, Sarah, that's an interesting point, because it does raise the question, what the heck does the Trump campaign do at this point? They come out of the gates trying to attack her for positions from the 2020 campaign, Democratic primary. Okay, I get that. They say she's no longer supports single payer health care. Just to name one of the issues they go after on, and they, certainly, talk her being about, you've heard before, West Coast liberal. Does it matter that she's evolving in her positions? Will the voters care to see that transition from where she was as a presidential candidate in 2020, then as vice president, to now being a presidential potential nominee now?
Absolutely. She has got, and she's already doing this a little bit. You see that she has walked back the idea that she thinks that all fracking should be banned. Medicare for all. She has said she no longer endorses that. She's talking about more funding for the border. Those are good things for swing voters in swing states. And I think that Donald Trump did not expect to be running they were completely calibrated for a Joe Biden race, right? They were framing things in terms of mental acuity, age, and now, unfortunately, for Donald Trump, he has to live in that frame where she is the young candidate. But they are trying to go as fast as they can to peg her as that San Francisco liberal. And if she doesn't let them, right, if her actions say otherwise, if her policies say otherwise, she is going to have to, though, explain why she changed her mind. And I think there's an easy way to say that, right? She has been vice president for 3 years. She's gained a tremendous amount of experience. She now understands what it means to be running to govern 350 million people in an enormous, diverse country. And I think if she's able to articulate how she's evolved on these issues, that is something that she can really do to win over these swing voters. And for people who are kind of beating her up on the flip-flopping of it all, let me tell you something. Mitt Romney went from being a sort of a moderate to liberalish Massachusetts governor to an incredibly conservative Republican candidate. People do this all the time, right? They change their public profile based on the office they're running for. She can do this. If J.D. Vance can call Trump America's Hitler, and then become his vice president, there is certainly room for her to do some pivoting to the center.
There's a whole runway worth of room if that's where you're going to go. So, Cornell, that sort of begs the question for me. I mean, what do you think about this mattering to, progressives and others? Can she move to the center safely in this campaign? It seemed to me that a lot of progressives immediately began to coalesce around her once it was clear she was going to be at the top of the ticket. How do you read it?
Well, what's moved to the center, right? I think over the last decade, I think we've talked about this before. I don't know what left right means anymore. Especially, I don't know what right means. And Michael, I don't think you know what right means anymore for the Republican Party if Donald Trump is on the right. I struggle with what that means anymore. Look, I think she's just got to be around where the people are on the issues, in everything from wage issues. to protecting Social Security, to the environment. I think she is more in line with where the majority of voters are. And again, it's blocking and tackling. Just go out there and talk about the issues. I don't think she has to change who she is, because quite frankly, I think she is far more in line with mainstream voters on the issues than Donald Trump and JD Vance are. One last thing quickly, and I'm going to be a Debbie Downer again here on this. I do fear the over calibration about the prosecutor, right? I've seen Democrats take this and run as the top cop before, and it has not worked out very well. Particularly because if your base begin to sort of move away and you sort of alienate your base, and Republicans get this, right? Lock in your base first and then grow out, right? I like her positioning where she is right now, talking about sort of the law and order, because that's a good contrast with Trump. But I think we got to be really careful with leaning and trying to over-calibrate on the top cop thing, because I've seen this happen before and it has not turned out well for Democrats.